Hello, Abnormal Investigations family. I've been battling a cold or allergies. We've got high ragweed and possible cold, so you'll have to excuse me with that. I have a encounter that was sent in by I believe I'm just going to call them law enforcement in Britain. I'm not sure exactly what they're called. And this is one I think you all are going to really get a lot of information from. It's sad, and I look to get your all's opinions on this because I believe I'm going to use this on our sit down because it has some questions in it that I've often wondered, and I think we're going to use this for discussion. What we're planning on doing, so none of y'all miss any of our shows, I know a lot of you get confused on what our shows are live boots on the grounds, our Saturday nights, um, and our sit downs we're going to move to Thursday nights. So that'll be Saturday and Thursday for sure, and then any others will be impromptu. So that should help you guys. Let's get into this encounter. Hello, Mike. I live in Britain. I've written this letter to hopefully help you understand some of the common languages we use over here to help you understand to where you live. I know we have different names for different roles we play in law enforcement in both countries. So I've tried to make this letter as understandable as I can for you to share with your audience. I have noticed a lot of law enforcement have trusted you to share their stories that have retired and so forth, and I am now one of them across the pond. I look forward to you sharing my encounter, and I hope people learn from it, and I'm also excited to see what people have to offer. Alright, so let's get into this one. He named it, I hunted a werewolf in a little village. March 1948, rural England. I'll never forget the day that Reverend, and it's redacted, burst into our station, his eyes wide open with terror. As a detective, I'd seen my share of frightened witnesses, but something about Thompson's demeanor chilled me. He yelled at me, "Detective, I need to speak with you. It's a matter of life and death," he urged. I ushered him into a quiet room as he was making quite the emotion, and I was also intrigued to what had this preacher so upset. And I asked him, "What is troubling you, Reverend?" He glanced around the room, ensuring we were alone. I've seen something unnatural. A man transformed into a beast, a wolf-like creature under the full moon. We was in church, and he couldn't control it, and when he ran to the back room, everyone thought he was sick, and when I accompanied him back to the back room, he transformed in front of me. I didn't know what to do. He then transformed back and ran out the back door. I had no idea what to tell people. I just told him he was sick and had to leave. I must admit, I raised my eyebrow in skepticism. "A werewolf, you mean?" I asked him. Thompson nodded vigorously. "Yes, I've witnessed it. I've witnessed it now. He's came to me multiple times. He's been spotted near Littleton Village. I fear for my life and the villagers' safety." As he shared his story, I found myself drawn in. Dates, times, descriptions seemed to precisely go with other things that were happening in our town that we thought were just related to pure fantasy. That night, under the full moon, I patrolled a small village with a team of constables. The air was heavy with an eerie silence. Suddenly, a chilling howl pierced the darkness. We all looked at each other. "By God," I whispered. "What was that?" As we approached the source, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall, gaunt, and it had yellow eyes that reflected under our flashlights. They were like ambers. "Arrest him," I shouted to my team. But as we closed in, the figure, it contorted, twisted in a grotesque wolf-like form. My team, I must admit, they did freeze in terror. The creature vanished into the night, leaving behind a trail of blood that we had no idea where it came from. My investigation continued, but the blood had ended as fast as it had started, and every lead ended in darkness. Locals, of course, started whispering and spreading rumors about ancient curses and supernatural forces, and Vampires, warlocks, witches, and you name it, they were talking about it. The local hub was full of stories now. I began to wonder, had I truly seen a werewolf, or was it just my imagination from all this bullshit talk? But one thing was certain. I'd never forget the terror that I felt, and I knew that that was real for sure. And I knew I'd never stop hunting that monster, if it was a human monster or whatever, until I found it. That's whenever things started to get really, really strange. We rushed to Reverend Thompson's home, our hearts racing with anticipation. I pounded on the door and there was no answer. Now you're probably asking yourself, why did we rush to his house? I'm jumping a little ahead of myself. I was left a box on my doorstep that had a human heart in it. We'll get to that in a minute. I know. I'm jumping around, Mike. Sorry. Reverend Thompson shouted, "It's detectives," as we beat on the Reverend's home. My gut twisted with foreboding. I nodded to my constable, and he did kick the door open. The scene that was in the front room of the Reverend scared me to the bone and chilled me like I'd never been. Reverend Thompson sat in his armchair, his eyes frozen in terror. His chest was ravaged, his heart was ripped out and missing. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me that hadn't happened to me in years of being a detective. The back door was wide open. The front room showed signs of a fierce struggle. Furniture was overturned, curtains were torn, blood was splattered everywhere. It was clear we had a huge crime scene, and it was clear the Reverend had fought for his life. We secured the scene and called for forensics. The autopsy confirmed our worst fears. The Reverend's heart was removed, but the DNA that they collected later turned out to be DNA from a canine, unknown source. I received a box on my front porch 3 days later that had a human heart in it. I thought that I was trying to be scared off the case of some serial killer. The heart was sentient, and the heart I had received was indeed confirmed to be the Reverend's. That's whenever I started feeling guilt that I had failed him, that I didn't listen to him, or I had not taken him serious enough. The investigation continued, but every lead seemed to end in darkness, as not too many people in law enforcement get too hyped up about hunting for a fairy tale, as you would say. The villagers whispered about ancient curses continued. The town was getting unruly at night. People were talking about hunting this thing down themselves. Was there a supernatural force stalking our town at night? I knew one thing. I had to find that monster that killed the Reverend. That monster, I still thought in my mind, could be a man, no matter the cost. No matter what horrors laid ahead, I vowed to bring justice to the Reverend and to the people of our small village. But as I walked out of the Reverend's home, I couldn't shake this feeling. A feeling of being watched. I noticed at my small home in the country where I would go home, a howl had arrived. It didn't seem all human. It was enough that I had a priest come and bless my home, my land, myself, and along with my dog. I still hear the howls at night, but they're not as frequent. I am older now, and I wonder, is it someone I know that can change? Or is it a serial killer? Honestly, I believe it is and was a werewolf. I know I may sound crazy, and a detective saying this, I would probably have lost my job if I was still working. They would have thought that I'd done and went to the loony bin, but there are too many sightings and legends for them not to be here. I still wonder and always will wonder, is it someone in town that I know and that I do business with? Who is it? Now when I go to town, I look at everybody as a suspect. Somebody that looks at me weird, somebody that follows me or has that strange look. Evil lives among us, Mike, and what you hunt in the woods at night may not be your friend by day. If you heard it at night, watch for someone with new injuries that match this. Trust me, there is documentation in our police files all the way back from the 1800s that speak of people seeing these beasts, hunting them, shooting them, hurting them, stabbing them, burning them, and the next day somebody in the village would end up with similar wounds. I'm telling you, Mike, there's a connection. Keep an eye out for anyone. If you get a chance to hurt one of these, watch for somebody that is injured and do not trust them if you find them. They remember by day what happens to them at night while they're the beast, and they will go to any length to stop you, as I'm afraid they will try to stop me too. That's why I decided to share this story. Once you put this out there to thousands of people, it cannot be redacted or took away. These things need to be spoke about, and I hope more people come forward. You'll never hear them ever admit to these files. We call them ghost files here in Britain. They're files that we don't talk about that only special people have access to. I hope that your viewers will get something from this, and I also hope to find out, do you all believe that it's possible that these people are actually changing? That's been a question of mine for a long time. I'm still on the fence about that, but I do look forward to seeing what everybody else says. Thank you so much for sharing this story, this encounter, police file. I have another one that was sent in also from a gentleman out of Missouri I'll be sharing here pretty soon. It has a lot of redacted content in it, but it does have a lot of great information, and it's also follows a lot like yours. I'm going to leave this one to the viewers and see what they think, guys, and then we'll have a sit down about it, hopefully, and we'll come to some conclusions or at least some theories. I want to thank you for sharing this, and until next time, guys, keep your head on a swivel. Don't be something's dinner, and we'll see you on the next one.